John's spaceship punched through the thin air around the planet. He held on tight as the vessel shuddered and groaned. The landing was bumpy, each jolt making his heart race. He had been preparing for this moment for years, but nothing could have truly prepared him for the reality of it. He had made it to Aridus, a planet covered in deserts. John stepped out of the spaceship, his boots sinking slightly into the soft, sandy ground. The landscape was vast and empty, stretching out as far as the eye could see. He took a deep breath, the air dry and hot, filling his lungs with a sense of adventure and trepidation. The air was thick and hot, almost suffocating. Heat waves rose from the desert sand, distorting the horizon and making the distant dunes shimmer like a mirage. John wiped the sweat from his brow, already feeling the intense heat through his suit. Two suns hung low in the purple sky, casting an eerie, otherworldly glow over the landscape. The twin suns were a constant reminder that he was far from Earth, in a place where the rules of nature were different and the dangers unknown. Orange sand dunes stretched out like a giant ocean, reflecting the light of the setting suns. The colors were vibrant and surreal, painting a picture of beauty and desolation. John couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and loneliness as he gazed at the endless expanse. John turned on his translator, a special gadget that helps understand alien languages. The device hummed to life, its screen flickering with strange symbols and characters. He had spent countless hours training with it, but this was the real test. He really hoped it would work. The success of his mission depended on it. He adjusted his equipment, making sure everything was in place. His heart pounded with a mix of excitement and fear. This was his chance to make history. He was all alone, a billion miles from Earth. The isolation was palpable, the silence of the desert almost deafening. He felt a pang of homesickness but pushed it aside. He had a job to do, and he couldn't afford to let his emotions get in the way. He had a job to do. Talk to the aliens, learn about them, understand their culture and technology. It was a daunting task, but one he had trained for. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead, and, most importantly, stay alive. The planet was beautiful, but dangerous. He had to be cautious, always on the lookout for potential threats. His survival depended on his ability to adapt and stay vigilant in this alien world. He climbed a huge sand dune, each step a struggle in the soft sand. The grains shifted beneath his feet, making every step feel like he was sinking into the earth. His breath came in short gasps, the dry air parching his throat. The sun beat down relentlessly, its rays reflecting off the sand, creating a shimmering mirage in the distance. He paused for a moment, wiping the sweat from his brow, and looked up at the towering dune ahead. It seemed to stretch endlessly, a mountain of sand that tested his resolve with every step. But he was determined. He had to see what lay beyond. The view from the top was amazing. As he reached the summit, the vast expanse of the desert unfolded before him, a sea of golden waves stretching to the horizon. The sky was a brilliant blue, contrasting sharply with the sandy landscape. He could see for miles, the undulating dunes creating a mesmerizing pattern. It was a sight that took his breath away, a moment of pure beauty in the harsh desert environment. He stood there for a while, taking it all in, feeling a sense of accomplishment and awe. But then he saw something shiny, metallic. It caught the sunlight, reflecting it like a beacon. At first he thought it was just another mirage, a trick of the light. But as he squinted and focused, he realized it was real. A strange object, half buried in the sand, glinting in the sunlight. Curiosity piqued, he felt a surge of excitement. What could it be? A piece of debris? A lost artifact? He had to find out. He changed direction, walking towards the strange object. Each step was filled with anticipation. The closer he got, the more details he could make out. It was sleek and smooth, unlike anything he had ever seen. His heart pounded in his chest, a mix of fear and excitement. What if it was dangerous? But he couldn't turn back now. He had come too far. He climbed another dune, and there it was, a big, sleek silver building nestled between the dunes like a hidden treasure. It was massive. The structure seemed out of place in the barren desert, its futuristic design contrasting sharply with the natural landscape. It looked like something out of a science fiction movie, with smooth curved surfaces and a metallic sheen. He couldn't believe his eyes. How had it ended up here, in the middle of nowhere? And then he saw her, standing in front of the building, tall and majestic. An alien queen in the middle of the swirling sand. She was unlike anything he had ever seen, a being of pure elegance and power. Her presence was commanding, and he felt a mix of awe and fear. Who was she? What did she want? He had so many questions, but he couldn't find the words to speak. Her shiny, emerald green body shimmered. The light danced off her skin, creating a mesmerizing display of colors. She seemed almost otherworldly, a being of light and energy. Her eyes, if you could call them that, glowed with an inner light, and he felt as if she could see right through him, into his very soul. Her 6 arms moved smoothly and gracefully. Each movement was deliberate and precise, like a dance. She gestured towards him, and he felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. It was as if she was communicating with him, not with words, but with her presence. He felt a connection, a bond that transcended language and understanding. Her face, if you could call it that, was covered in intricate lines, and she seemed super smart, smarter than John could understand. The lines seemed to pulse with energy, and he felt as if they were telling a story, a history of her people. She looked at him with an expression of curiosity and understanding, and he felt a sense of kinship. Despite their differences, he felt as if they were connected, as if they were meant to meet. He knew right then and there this meeting would change everything. It was a moment of epiphany, a realization that his life would never be the same. He felt a sense of purpose, a calling. This encounter was not by chance, it was destiny, and he was ready to embrace it, whatever it might bring. John walked towards her slowly, each step crunching on the arid ground beneath his boots. The vast desert stretched endlessly around them, a barren landscape that seemed to swallow sound and light. His hands were up, palms open, to show he meant no harm. The gesture was universal, or so he hoped. He spoke clearly and slowly, hoping his translator would help them understand each other. The device was his lifeline, a bridge between 2 worlds. "Hello, I come in peace," he said, enunciating each word carefully. His voice echoed slightly in the still air. The translator made clicking and whistling noises, a symphony of alien sounds that filled the silence. The queen tilted her head, her eyes narrowing as if trying to decipher the strange sounds. She made a low humming sound, deep and rumbly, that John felt in his bones. It was a sound that seemed to resonate with the very earth beneath them. He had no clue what she was saying. The sounds were alien, incomprehensible, and he felt a pang of frustration. He started to get frustrated. John tried again, his mind racing for a way to bridge the gap between them. He pointed to himself. "John," he said, hoping the simplicity of names would be understood. Then he pointed to her. "You?" he asked, his voice tinged with hope and desperation. The queen watched him, her face hard to read. Her eyes were like dark pools, revealing nothing of her thoughts. She pointed to herself, her 6 arms moving in a complicated way, each gesture fluid and precise. It was a dance of communication, intricate and beautiful. The translator whirred, but this time nothing came out. It hadn't understood. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of their failed connection. John took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. He knew this was just the beginning. Communication was a challenge, but he was determined to find a way. He had to, for the sake of both their worlds. John felt really sad. He was stuck, unable to talk to the only living thing for 1,000,000,000 miles. He sat down, feeling defeated. He had failed. A shadow fell over him. He looked up. The queen was standing over him, offering him something. A container filled with a sparkly liquid. It was a sign of peace, of trust. John hesitated for a moment, then took the container. He smelled it carefully. It had a sweet, earthy smell. He took a small sip. It was cool and refreshing, unlike anything he'd ever tasted. He looked up at the queen, feeling thankful. Maybe, just maybe, things would be okay. Days turned into weeks. John and the queen, whose name he learned was Zilia, figured out how to communicate a little bit, using gestures, facial expressions. Slowly, they started to understand each other. One afternoon, the wind started to blow hard. The sky, usually bright purple, turned a weird yellow color. John felt scared. Zilia noticed he was worried. She pointed to the sky, her face serious. Then he saw it. A giant wall of sand miles high rushing towards them. A sandstorm. Zilia grabbed his hand, her grip was really strong. "Run!" she seemed to say, even though she didn't make a sound. They ran, the wind pushing them from behind, sand stinging their eyes. The big building was close. Zilia pulled him towards a hidden door, a small hatch that blended in with the metal. Inside it was cool and dark. The loud wind was quietened by the thick walls. John collapsed, breathing hard. Zilia touched his shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle. She had saved him. He looked around. The room was plain and simple. but it was safe. He was safe. He looked at Zelia, feeling very grateful. He didn't know how, but he had to find a way to thank her. The storm raged for days. John and Zelia stayed close in the small room, sharing stories using hand movements and drawings. He learned about her people, their history, their way of life. She was a wise and kind leader, and her people really respected her. When the storm finally stopped, they went outside to a changed world. The dunes had moved, reshaped by the powerful wind. John's ship was half buried in sand. Zelia saw how upset he was. She touched his arm, her face kind. She pointed to the sky, then to the ship, then back to herself. John understood. She would help him. With Zelia's help, John fixed his spaceship. It took days, but finally it was ready to fly. He stood in front of her, feeling sad. He had come to Aradis as an explorer, but he was leaving with something much more important. A friend. He hugged her, a sign of respect and friendship. She hugged him back, her 6 arms wrapping around him in a surprisingly warm hug. Then, he climbed into his ship. As he took off, he looked back one last time. Zelia stood on the dune, a lone figure against the setting suns. He knew he would never forget her. John's trip back to Earth was long and lonely, but he remembered his time on Aradis, Zelia's kindness and wisdom. He knew that somewhere out there, among the stars, there was another world, not so different from his own. He had a story to tell, a story of making peace and staying alive, of talking to each other and trusting one another, a story that gave hope for the future of humans, a future where we weren't alone in the huge universe.